Good evening, I'm Jeff Lyons. It is 9 o'clock here on Monday night, February 8th. Time for the 14 First Alert Weather Show at 9 o'clock. We stream every night at 9 o'clock and every day at 2:30 to give you a full form weather forecast that you can respond to, ask questions, and I'm watching your comments on the 14 News Facebook page. So if you have a question or something, throw it in there and we'll get to it in just a bit. We have a clear night out there at the moment. However, the clouds are going to return overnight, and that will set us up for some rain by tomorrow afternoon. The temperature tomorrow will soar to its warmest level this month, certainly, and perhaps this year, up to 60. We do have some spotty afternoon rain, though, on the way, and then temperatures return to the 40s. Over the weekend, we have a more substantial chance of rain, and we'll look at that here in just a second. Here's the cloud cover by tomorrow morning, excuse me, mid-morning. We have clouds and a southwesterly wind streaming in, and that will keep us without much sun. However, the south wind will more than be enough to bring that temperature into the mid to upper 50s and likely 60s across western Kentucky. Rain then begins to show up by Tuesday afternoon and evening, and this will affect primarily that afternoon commute after school. So we're looking at 5 through about 8 p.m. Everything then sinks down to the south and moves out as that cold air shifts around, winds from the northwest, and that will cool us out and dry the atmosphere out. So we have sunshine Wednesday, but then we're going to drop right back down into the middle 40s again, which is the average temperature for this time of the year. Rain amounts are going to be pretty pathetic out there, maybe 1/10 of an inch across western Kentucky, but for the most part, this is just going to be intermittent kind of sprinkles, intermittent wiper kind of rain. Over the next 7 days, we take the big drop there from Tuesday to Wednesday's high, but then gradually warm up with rain likely on Saturday and Sunday. Our temperatures out there now are still coasting down. We're right at freezing at Evansville, 31 in Henderson, and mid-30s across western Kentucky at this point. The feels like temperature virtually the same since there's not much wind out there. Our temp is coupled with a dew point at 24 and calm winds at this time. Not out of the question we could see a little fog, especially where we have melting snowpack, which is area-wide. So, be mindful of that in the morning, although the fog forecast was not really lighting up much fog at all. 47, our high today, is the warmest of the month. Tomorrow, if we hit 60, that'll be the warmest, I believe, of the year. I should have looked at the January calendar. I don't recall any days where we hit 60 in January. I could be wrong. Well, you know what? I'm right here with the computer. Let me just double check that. I don't like to speak unless I know it's absolutely the correct thing here, so I'll just check it while we're talking. And, it has been abnormally cold for much of the year so far. So let me look here. Just give me a second, and we will get this in here, and then we'll be absolutely right. So we had last month, this is what we do all day. We kind of chase we hit 60 on the 7th and 67 on the 8th, 66 on the 9th. And we had some thunderstorms in there too. Okay, so see, that's why you check these things, just to make sure that I'm giving you absolutely accurate information. But we certainly haven't hit 60 this month so far, and it'll be a welcome change. For the month now, our average temperature is still in the basement down there, 8.7 degrees below normal. Our snowfall is still 7.2 inches more than we would typically get by this time of the winter. We're about halfway through the winter right now, at least meteorological winter, which began on December 1st. We've gotten through December, January, and I guess we're 2.5 months in now, aren't we? I always think of winter, though, as going into mid-March. So either way you slice it, we're making progress there at getting toward spring. That warm front that lifts through tomorrow will give us a brief breath of spring. We have southerly winds coming up and some rain, followed up very quickly then by those showers in the afternoon as the cold front comes in. And then behind it, we have high pressure, which will be pumping down colder, drier air for the remainder of the week, and maybe a few more showers sneaking in here on Thursday night. That shows up a little better in the GFS model and the European, which I'll show you here in a moment. There's that rain late Thursday night, early Friday morning. And then over the weekend, we have a system, southerly system coming up. Notice, I don't know if you can see that, I'm standing in front of it, but we have a low down over about Little Rock, and the winds, of course, counterclockwise into the low. This will be the classic setup for a snowstorm, but it's going to be too warm area-wide. So this thing will roll right up the Ohio River Valley, hopefully bringing us some significant rainfall, maybe an inch or two possible. I have the GFS rain models now, and that weekend part of the system generating between 1 and 2 inches. Now again, just like with snow, when we look at guidance numbers, that's all they are. This is not the gospel on rainfall, but at least it gives us a hint that some heavier or more meaningful rain is possible. You'll get a kick out of the European here when we compare in just a second. The European is dry Thursday night, but it too brings rain in on Saturday night and early Sunday, so we would have more confidence in the weekend rain. The amounts, though, again, the models diverge here just a little bit, and you'll see that at least on the European model, it's only advertising around an inch of rain. So right now we're thinking, you know, an inch or 2 inches of rain on the higher end would be plausible given the data we have today. And of course, we'll update this as we go through the week. We're not looking at a flooding risk or anything like that, as we are still quite dry. We're about almost, by that point, we will be 2 inches below normal on rainfall. 34 for the low tonight and 59 for the high tomorrow with that afternoon rain. Valentine's Day, don't forget that one now. We have rain possible, 49 degrees, 51 on Sunday, with some more rain in there too. Longer range, we are expecting warmer than normal temperatures to settle in here through the 23rd of February, and at the same time a little wetter than normal too, and that would take into account that system coming in this weekend. Rick Hankey and his dog Amos making our pet pick for tonight. So thanks, Rick, for that. And it looks like Amos is hanging on my every word here, so I had better give you some information here. Let's see what your questions are, if we have any. And we have Jeanette Rice in there. Hang on a second. All right. Oh, we got a lot of questions and comments here. Jeff Miller, good evening out in Saval. Lenny Howard's in there. Good evening. Suzanne Daly says, good evening. Hey, Suzanne, how are you doing tonight? Let's see. Zach Seats, good evening. Concerns about severe storms next week for Evansville is likely to be regular thunder. There were rumbles of thunder showing in some of the guidance for for this weekend, Saturday, Sunday. Nothing from the Storm Prediction Center. Can't rule it out, but I'm not too concerned about it at this point. Ricky Brown loves the weather. Well, sure, when it's, you know, almost 50 out there and sunny, what's not to like? Saturday's rain, is that supposed to start earlier in the afternoon? Skylar Davis, looks like more toward the afternoon, earlier in western Kentucky because it'll be coming up from the south. Jeanette Rice wants warm weather. Well, we're working on that, Jeanette. Tori Talbert, nothing crazy or bad, right? Not that I know of. I mean, temperatures through the weekend are supposed to stay in the 50s, 40s and 50s. So that usually, if we get any thunder, it would likely be elevated thunderstorms. You know, we've talked about that on here before, and what that is, instead of a surface-based storm, which would have the potential to become severe, elevated thunderstorms kind of glide up on top of the warmer air at the surface. So you have, you know, 40s, 50s down here, and the storm then initiates above us. So we hear the thunder, we get the rain, but oftentimes the wind, anything that's going on up there doesn't make it down to the ground. Think of it as kind of like a storm forming on the second floor of your apartment building, right? Now, if it formed in your apartment, it would blow stuff around and cause damage, possibly. But if it's upstairs, you're going to get the noise and maybe the rain or the leak through the roof, but you will not get the wind and all of that. That's kind of sequestered by the inversion or by the warmer air at the surface. Elevated storms are kind of hard to even visualize. I've tried the best I can, but basically they just ride up and over and therefore are generally not a problem here at the surface. Now, when things in the spring, when we have, storms that form at the surface, surface-based convection, then you've got your wind and your wind shear and all of those things to be concerned with. Elevated storms sometimes will produce hail. That's a one thing that they can do and get through, the inversion or the lower layer there, the warmer layer. Okay. High temperatures, I think we've been through. This is actually Science Corner. I kind of snuck us in there. I wanted to talk about that much colder than normal, and I've been asked a few times in the last few days, hey, what about global warming? What about climate change? I thought this was the warmest year on record around the Earth. And it is. Those things are all true. There still is climate change, as there always has been. It has warmed. We've had several consecutive years at or near the record warmth for the globe since we began keeping records, and by using forensic data, inferred that these are some of the warmest years we've had in the last 100 or 200 years. So having said that, well, what's up with the cold? I mean, it has been really frigid here the last couple of weeks. And part of that is caused by the polar vortex and disruptions in the polar vortex, which are thought to be a result of the changing climate. It's warmer, right? And so what happens is we get warm air that circulates up over the poles, and it disrupts the colder air at the surface. Remember, of course, cold air heavier and denser, so it's down hugging the ground. But if the warmer air gets up here, the jet stream, which normally would be up here this time of the year, up around the Arctic Circle, it disrupts it and it will sag down. And when it does that, we get an outbreak of Arctic air, oftentimes over North America. Now, this can, of course, happen in Europe and Russia and China, any place, in the upper or northern hemisphere. And so when we get these polar outbreaks due to a disruption of the polar vortex, that's what's going on. And it's believed that the warming climate, warmer waters higher up at the higher latitudes, like up around the Arctic Circle, less ice, all these things are not the norm, and so it then causes kind of a chain reaction where you then disrupt the jet stream and the cold air spills out. And just as a case in point, this is still ongoing, even though we don't have the ridiculously cold temperatures. They do out in the Northeast. In fact, if you're watching the news tonight, Lake Champlain is nearly frozen all the way across, and that hasn't happened since I think 2016 or 2019. So it's not uncommon, but it's also not a daily or seasonal occurrence where it freezes all the way over. Lake Erie has about 90% coverage with ice, and again, that is a big number and one that doesn't happen very often. So we have been looking at some historic cold across the eastern half of the country. We were in that group, but now we're starting to ease out as the warmer air begins to lift to the north and kind of reassert the typical pattern, which I showed you earlier, is calling for warmer than normal to our south and wetter than normal there to the north. Both of these things, the polar vortex and this lingering disruption in the pattern, have made it a very strange winter. We've had more snow in some locations here in the northern, or in the panhandle of Florida, western panhandle, than we have in Salt Lake City. I read the other day that we'd had, I think, 1 1/10 near Tallahassee, or in that area between Panama City and going over toward Destin and that way. Then we've only had a little less than 1 inch in Salt Lake City. And keep in mind, Salt Lake City, I mean, their reputation is on powdery snow and skiing and all that. Utah more really than the city. But you get my point here. We've had more snow here than we have where we typically get snow. It's been very warm in the Rockies. That has caused some snowpack to melt. It is also thought that at least the Colorado River is running quite a bit lower, and the reservoirs like, you have Lake Mead at Hoover Dam, that thing is almost empty anyway, And that's going to put a real pressure on water interests out there, cities and that agriculture that rely on that. And then above that, you have Lake Powell, and same thing. So the Colorado River, which carries the water essentially from near Wyoming here all the way down to Mexico, everybody wants the water out of it. And because we've had this weird winter where we had all the cold and wet weather to the east and virtually nothing to the west, has disrupted that too. So that's kind of another signal or another thing being caused by climate change. All right, Paula Skelton, when can I stop dripping my faucets? Well, you could stop that today. Jeff Miller wants to know about weather satellites. Okay, for Science Corner. I can tell you briefly that the satellite technology that we have is really, really good now at high resolution images, not only the weather, so the clouds and the satellite can discern moisture content in the clouds, the freezing level, all these different things that we need to know in order to forecast. But the satellites can also look at vegetation, ground cover, snowpack, and things like that. That data is then ingested into the models, and hopefully then the models are, basically we call that, they are parameterized, right? So if you got a snowpack over half the country, that's going to have a big impact on temperature forecasting. They are going to be colder than what the model would typically show. Models over time will revert to climatology, or what the normal should be. And so with more high resolution and more frequent data coming down from the satellite, it's possible then to tweak, say, the European, the GFS models, and even the higher res stuff that I show you every night, the graph and the NAM4K, et cetera, and then the HER, to say, hey, look, it's much, much colder than it should be here, therefore, adjust the grid accordingly. So satellites have a lot to do with that. Satellites orbit at about 22,000 miles above the Earth, so they are geostationary, meaning they're far enough out that the time it takes them to go around once is equal to what it is here on Earth. So the satellite's always in the same place. That's why if you've got Dish TV or Direct TV, when you go out there and aim your dish, you set it and forget it, right? The satellite doesn't move around. Here at the station, we have satellites. We still receive some programming by satellite, and we have dishes that can be turned because we take it off of different satellites. So yeah, and you think about it, satellites really did not come into the weather enterprise until the 60s. So this is still relatively new technology. Doppler is much newer, of course, but they are indispensable. Couldn't do it without satellites. Missy, are we still going to get snow this winter? Well, not this week. Paula Schaefer says her mother-in-law lives 40 miles south of Orlando and it's 28 degrees there. Oh, I bet she's cussing right now. Bless her heart. Yeah, she wouldn't cuss, not Paula's mother. Yeah, it has been really cold all the way down to Miami and Key West. Places that are usually, bulletproof when it comes to cold air. So it has just been a really, really bizarre winter pattern. And it has all of us wondering what this bodes for spring, because we're coming off of 2 record tornado years here in the tri-state. The La Nina pattern is the driving force here behind what we're seeing, and the question mark is, will we continue that into the spring? Usually a La Nina year, those tend to be kind of quiet. So hopefully that will be the case this year. Anyway, that's all I have for you tonight. I will see you over on 14 News at 10 with some new information there. In the meantime, you can watch the Olympics and get caught up on all that. And I will see you later on 14 News at 10. Have a good night.